I'm Michael Méndez Guevara. I'm the author of The Closest Thing to a Normal Life. También pueden decir Miguel, porque Miguel es mi nombre en mi certificado de nacimiento. Y soy el autor de The Closest Thing to a Normal Life. Closest Thing to a Normal Life is a little Friday Night Lights meets Field of Dreams with a little South Texas salsa. It is a deeply Texas book. Ethan Matthew Cruz Canton is living a charmed life in Spain with his parents who are journalists, foreign correspondents. But that changes tragically and violently, and Ethan Matthew finds himself starting over, living a brand new life in a community so full of tradition and that is traditionally not very welcoming of newcomers, which is really tough when you're a newcomer and a senior, you're a senior in high school. But really all Ethan Matthew wants to do is just keep his head down, get through the year and move on to the next chapter of his life. At its core, The Closest Thing to a Normal Life is about identity. It's about self-discovery. It is about loving who you are, accepting yourself. It is about friendship and standing up for what is right. And also learning that maybe there isn't such a thing as normal, or that normal looks different for every person. I really worked to create the type of environment where students felt like they could openly and honestly share their opinions, their thinking. We read about what was going on in the world. We read lots of articles and discussed contemporary issues. And so I got to hear kids' real thinking on those kind of things. And sometimes it's uncomfortable, and sometimes it was counter to what I was thinking, but it was always real and honest. So much of Ethan Matthew's story is real. When my youngest son was a senior in high school, the summer before his senior year, the parents of one of his classmates were tragically killed in a car accident. And that set in motion the journey for Ethan Matthew, thinking about what it must be like to find some semblance of normal when you are forced to travel a journey that you never expected. And so that's where that idea of grief came from. As for identity and coming of age, I knew where my story was going, but I hadn't come out at the time. And I thought, how can Ethan Matthew discover his true self, his identity, who he is, if I wasn't able to do it for myself? And so I knew that that I couldn't, that the story would feel disingenuous and dishonest if I weren't honest with myself. How could Ethan Matthew be honest with himself if I weren't honest with who I am? And I also remember an interview on Latino USA with Maria Hinojosa. She was interviewing Benjamin Saenz, the author of the Aristotle and Dante books. And one of the things he said, that he was struck by the number of men in their 50s and 60s who wrote to him and said that his books were what they needed when they were growing up. And I thought, I want my books, I want Ethan Matthew's story to be that for somebody else who is trying to come to grips with their identity and who they are, and to be able to love themselves and accept themselves and know that it's okay to love who you are. And so that's so much of where Ethan Matthew's story is. The Closest Thing to a Normal Life is set in the aftermath of the 2016 election, which gave such license to bravado and bigotry. I remember hearing news stories about kids saying that someone in the hallway of their school yelled, "Build a wall" to them, or that your parents are going to be deported. And so I'm hoping that it sparks these conversations about our humanity and who we are as a society, but that we also stand up to that bravado and to that bigotry, that we say that that's not the world that we want to live in. much like what's going on now with the protests and with ICE and the deportations, I want to spark those conversations about activism and doing what is right and how we create the kind of world that we want to live in. But I also want to spark those conversations about who we are, about identity, and how there is no one way or no one right way to be who you are. As a Warito, I remember growing up feeling like I wasn't brown enough for brown people and I wasn't white enough for white people. And so because of that, I often shied away from my culture, from my identity, from the language. And now I want to embrace all of that. I think my writing process is a lot like my hair. It is wild, crazy, all over the place, and it never looks the same from day to day. I am a percolator, bubbler, brewer. A story, idea, character, some inspiration comes to me and I bubble and brew on that. I do a thing that I call dream writing. Right before I go to bed at night, I think about that character, scene, situation, whatever it is, hoping that I will dream about it. But the reality is that I am always writing because there's always some idea, some story, some character percolating, bubbling, and brewing inside my head until I'm able to get to pen and paper, get that out there, write it down, and then I go back and I revise, I edit, I share the idea, I share my writing with other people, take their feedback and come back and do what writers do and try to make it better till I can get it to a place where I want it. The main source of inspiration for my writing has been the students who have sat in my classroom for my 20 plus years as a teacher. Their journeys, their struggles, their joys, their hurt, their humor, their flat out silliness sometimes just inspires what I write and the stories I create. I taught high school journalism for a long time, and I have always said that high school journalists are some of the bravest people in the world. I thank all the students who have been, who sat in my class and endured life with me as their teacher because they inspire me.